Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. My name is Maeve. I am psyched to be wrapping the rest of all three matches today with Hayden. I am so excited to be back on the mic with you after Pokemon World Championships and in this playoff bracket format. And your guys' match in the last one seemed pretty, pins and needles kind of towards the ends of it.
Yeah, your first one of the day did too. There were so many really precise technical decisions, but all of the players were making in all of these different situations. I'm so excited just to see what the format is like after Worlds with all of these brilliant players in from teams who made it to the top 16 getting to play off against other brilliant players. It's very just so I've been saying this a lot, but it really is such a treat. And we've got three whole more ones. I'm very excited to do all of them with you, May.
I'm super stoked, right? And like you said, all of these matches, as we approach this top 16, they get so interesting. I mean, not only are we in this funky kind of post-Worlds format where there is all those texts that got really popular for Worlds are now part of the metagame for this. So it becomes a little bit tougher, I think, when you move a little bit forward, like you're trying to prep for, okay, so this is what so-and-so used at Worlds, but this is like the fun thing that I've wanted to use since before, but now we're in this part where I have to do well and I have to prep for more weakness policy Charizard that wasn't as big in the 2 weeks leading up to Worlds, but then like 4 people ran it and did really well, and all of that fun stuff. And we have a really interesting match as well. It's between Luciano, Begot, and Donguk, Jung. And already though, Brazil and South Korea has already been decided. South Korea has won. They are one step closer to matching their top 4 victory or their top 4 result from the 2021 World Cup. But I think we still have a really interesting match between us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think South Korea getting a more definitive victory is a whole lot of momentum for their side. They've already won 4 of the games. If they could win 5 or even 6, that would be such a psychological victory for that side. If Brazil is able to bring it back up to 4-3 and say, look, we know we lost in top 16, but it was really close and we've got a fire lit under us to do better next year. That's a great opportunity. All of these players have their individual records. So much that each side can be playing for, and such a great opportunity still for 2 players to be able to face off and for us to get to highlight that. Looking at the teams... Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say, I don't know if we've gotten to feature either of these players on stream. We have gotten to see a lot of players from both sides. I know I've done some of Joao Henrique's. We had Caio Romanini on yesterday, which means we also had... Ji-Suk Lee, a lot of really interesting players, but I know immediately if you want to jump back into what you're saying, I'm seeing that Hyung-woo Shin's team looking very similar to that team that I believe Colin and Raghav ran in, I believe, the New Jersey regional.
I think we saw that from Justin Burns and Alex Underhill as well.
Oh, right, yes.
Spectacular. The alchemy getting to come out. It's so wonderful to see this mix in formats that you can grab something from months and months and months ago that no one's prepared for and is this really precise, well-made team, or you can grab something just hot off the presses for the World Championships. There's so much variety to be preparing for and so much that players can do to maximize things that they're comfortable with versus things that they're not. So much knowledge to leverage from the past. If Hugo had known about this team, that might have been a huge advantage for getting that 2-0, but it's so much to prepare for to be ready for all of those. Lots of other different choices, even just seeing teams that look relatively standard. There's such a variety in those archetypes. And so all these other teams, the choice to run things like Porygon 2 with the Zacian instead of some other things, and small technical choices and sets can still make such a difference in how these sets are played. So lots to watch for in this next set of what both sides might adjust with.
Yes, absolutely. Lots to watch for, right? And Brazil looks like they're Kyogre heavy this week. So I always find that that's interesting to see kind of what restricted pairs get used. But if we want to go and take a look at the 2 players that we will be featuring this round, I think we're going to be seeing something a little bit different, not too far off the grid here, but a lot of interesting teams nonetheless. But both of these competitors, very talented. Luciano Begot, World Cup competitor in 2021, Players Cup 2, Latin American qualifier top 6, VR Tundra Challenge top 16 that we put on back in 2020. Donguk Jung put World Cup competitor last year top 4 from that South Korea team. Crown Tournament finalist, which was actually a Pokemon Korea organized tournament to celebrate the Crown Tundra release. World's Day 2 competitor in 2017 and the Korean Nationals finalist in 2017. So 2017, a big year for Donguk Jung, definitely trying to replicate some similar results in this format.
It's awesome to see in histories of results, like some years that just really stuck out for a player, where things just really clicked with them. And it's so interesting to see how much that might carry forwards into them trying to maybe emulate those styles of play as the play changes, or if they go with something totally different. Clearly, Donguk's figured out something that works really well for him in 2021 and bringing things up into 2022. It looks like we're seeing lots of Incineroar Thundurus on both sides as we get into the matchups. Some fairly standard things for both sides, lots of Whimsicott and Zacian. But nevertheless, some interesting variety in those special attacker restricteds that are going with the Zacian.
Yeah, Luciano is actually running the exact same 6 that we saw Sam Pandelis run just 2 matches ago. So I think that'll be interesting to see exactly how Luciano pilots it versus how Sam piloted it for his victory. And, you know, like you said as well, Donguk Jung, his team looks pretty standard, right? But I always find it interesting to have both Whimsicott and Rillaboom on the same team. You have a great Fire, Water, Grass core with Rillaboom, Incin, and Kyogre. So pretty strong Pokemon there as well. But those Thundurus, I think, are a Pokemon that, like we saw in that first match, not a Pokemon that you can ignore when you're bringing it to a set here. And I think that Rillaboom is really trying to stave off that Gastrodon on Luciano's side, try and scare it from coming to this match.
Absolutely, that Rillaboom is so crucial for making sure that this Kyogre is going to be able to get off attacks. The other crucial difference is comparing to the match we just watched with Sam running this team against a Tornadus. This Whimsicott means that there's this potential for taunt speed ties, for maybe getting a Tailwind off before someone goes for taunt. And I think that totally changes the matchup, even though we're seeing like a Kyogre Zacian versus a Zacian Calyrex. And then, as you mentioned, that Rillaboom totally affecting whether or not Gastrodon's a safe bring to that match. But then if you bring the Rillaboom and the Gastrodon doesn't come, there's not really anything else that Rillaboom is super excited to face down. Maybe the Calyrex if it has an Assault Vest, but other than that, definitely a bit of a mind game there in terms of what Pokemon come to each game in the set.
Yeah, like that knockoff Rillaboom is possibly a threat to that Shadow Rider Calyrex, but, you know, depends on what you want to bring. Calyrex and Whimsicott, though, will be the lead for Luciano, and from Donguk, we will see the Thundurus and the Zacian. So 2 big physical attackers coming out, and if that Whimsicott is running Charm on, like we saw on Sam Pandelis's, it might be a rough awakening for that Zacian, maybe on turn 2 after it can get up something like a Tailwind.
Absolutely. Donguk is going for this mode where maybe the Whimsicott's in the back and you can set Tailwind later, but that means for the moment, this, like the Zacian and the Thundurus are probably slower than the Calyrex, and it's going to be tough to figure out how to still do enough damage when that Whimsicott doesn't even have to set Tailwind to make the Calyrex faster. It can maybe even just start by going for Charm a whole lot. And so I'm very curious to see what Donguk is able to do to sort of try to pivot out of this position that seems a little bit tough.
Yeah, Thundurus is going to be the pivoter, bringing in the Incineroar here. Incineroar is Intimidate, not doing too much to either of these special attackers, but the threat of the Dark typing definitely adding to the damage output. But Fake Tears is actually that supportive move, and that is going to go into the Zacian, dropping its special defense by 2 stages, allowing this Astral Barrage to really hit hard here. And if this is that Choice Specs variant, should be enough for that 1-hit knockout, and it is. So that Choice Specs variant really kind of paying off, getting a Grimnay boost right out of the gate. This Incineroar cannot fake out this Calyrex, so already this Incineroar knows that it's got to do something quick to prevent this thing from going for a Dynamax, maybe getting a Steamroll up, and starting to become a real problem.
Yeah, Calyrex with potentially Specs and the special attack boost, it's so scary. I've never been more terrified of a lead than Whimsicott Calyrex. Seeing all this variety, that Fake Tears reveal, totally changes how Donguk probably is thinking about approaching this match. You can't lead with 2 things that are slower than the Calyrex because something will faint. And so definitely still some options Donguk has. That Incineroar is still threatening that Calyrex a whole lot, even with the boost on Calyrex, but it's going to be tough to figure out how exactly to do the damage that you want to in this situation. We're seeing Donguk might be going for a Dynamax with the Incineroar just to make sure it can survive and stop that Calyrex. Really a tough position.
Yeah, I mean, Dynamax Incineroar feels always like your last chance option for a Dynamax. When you're looking at Donguk's team, he's got 3 other Pokemon that would rather Dynamax before it, being the Thundurus, the Rillaboom, and that Kyogre, right? So when you're bringing out this Dynamax Incineroar, you know you need to get this Max Darkness up just to get that super effective damage to stop this Calyrex Shadow Rider, who has now become a legitimately and literally massive threat by going for its own Dynamax on the opposite side of the field. And this Whimsicott now having that ability to go for fake tears instead of carrying a move like Charm, like we saw in that first set of games between Sam and Sebastian, makes it a little bit tougher because you can start targeting down some of these things. Maybe not the Thunderous to not proc that Defiant boost, but you have the opportunity to get a couple of different Pokemon real scared. But Protect is another move here that Whimsicott is showing that it has, while Protect from the Thunderous goes off as well on Donguk's side, and that means at least this Calyrex's Max Quake is going to be targeting into that Incineroar, getting some super effective damage off, not enough to get that knockout, so that Dynamax absolutely huge for Donguk, trying to get as much damage off as he possibly can. The special defense boost gonna help with that Kyogre in the back, especially if this Max Darkness is not enough to get that knockout, thanks to this Calyrex definitely being faster, but it is not enough to get the knockout on this turn. That is a huge amount of damage, but now at this point, that special defense boost completely disappearing thanks to that Max Darkness.
Such a brilliant demonstration of how well designed this team is, that this Calyrex had this option for saying, I'm going to start with a lot of pressure from Choice Specs. I know that your best option into that is probably going to be bringing in that Incineroar. If you don't Dynamax it, I'll just Max Quake and it will go away. If you do Dynamax it and you somehow survive, I know I can survive an uninvested Max Darkness. And that's such a huge deal, especially with this Calyrex getting the targeting right and doing so much damage to the Thunderous.
Yeah, that Max Phantasm able to get that knockout onto the Thunderous, dropping the defense as well onto that Incineroar, calling that Max Guard from the Incineroar as well, getting a second Grim Neigh boost. This Whimsicott did not go for any Prankster type moves, went for a Moonblast into that Max Guard, which honestly would be enough for the knockout as well. You probably got a pretty free Max Guard Moonblast if you need to at this point as well, because I'm not sure if that Whimsicott has taken any damage. This is going to force the Rillaboom in. The last two Pokemon for Donguk's side at least gives you that ability to go for something like that Grassy Glide, get that knockout onto that Calyrex before it can continue to knock out the Pokemon on your side of the field, but then you still have to deal with this Whimsicott who has the ability to at least fire off an attack into the Incineroar.
Yeah, we'll have to see. If that Moonblast is a KO on the Incineroar, then it's definitely going to be tough for Donguk to be able to do too much. At least you do get to be in a position where you probably get to see another of the Pokemon that Luciano brought. You don't have to have this end at just the lead. Having that Grassy Glide is really nice just for the planning aspect. But barring some really brilliant things that Donguk was able to come up with, this is definitely looking more like a Game 2 here.
Yeah, I think Luciano, probably that fake tears was probably the biggest clutch reveal in turn one, right? Like, sometimes you don't want to give up that information, but it really is huge, and that Moonblast is enough to get that knockout onto that Incineroar, knocking that Dynamax Pokemon out. Not something you see Whimsicott really doing, is targeting and getting knockouts onto those Dynamax Pokemon. But now Luciano has the opportunity to bring something in the back, get some damage off onto this Rillaboom, allow that Whimsicott to maybe go and help out as well. Zacian, I think, is a Pokemon that, unless this Rillaboom has some high horsepower and some really, really good critical hits and some luck, I think at this point it might be a little bit tougher for Donguk to kind of get himself out of here and go for something, I think, prepping for Game 2.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward towards Game 2. Tough that Donguk might not be able to get to see what that fourth Pokemon is. You really want to know whether that's a Gastrodon or not to know whether you should be bringing Rillaboom. But it might just end here with the Zacian getting this Behemoth Blade off, and then that Whimsicott might be able to follow it up with Moonblast and get the KO, or the Zacian should be able to do a whole lot of damage itself. This Rillaboom down to just 28 hit points. A strong breeze will knock it out, and Donguk probably going to just take this next turn or two to think about how to play going forwards.
I think Whimsicott is the Pokemon definition of a strong breeze, so that is a very good way to put it. I think it's at this point, right? Donguk, at least, you can assume that Zacian's going to be that Pokemon in the back. So maybe not exactly the information he was fishing for here. Dealing with this Moonblast from this Whimsicott, at least you're not giving any information from the Zacian. You can just click Behemoth Blade just in case something happens. That way you're not revealing if you've got Quick Attack or Brick Break or Substitute or anything other than possibly that Play Rough, because Play Rough is your best option into that Kyogre. So if you hide that you don't have that, it's at least another piece of information to kind of carry into that second game. But if you're Donguk, you got to stop that Whimsicott and that Calyrex. You got to do something quick and early, maybe lead that Kyogre, get a double target off, and then possibly just go and target into that Calyrex and finish it off on that turn.
Absolutely. I do think that Donguk was definitely playing that whole set to try to get the information that you need to be able to take it out, knowing that Fake Tears exists. You now know that Max Darkness isn't a guaranteed KO. The Grassy Glide went into each of the two targets that it could to try to get a rough sense of how bulky they are versus how fast. Because probably you're going to have to play to a totally different game plan in the next game. It's awesome to see that. But also, what a spectacular showing from that Calyrex. I've never seen, that was so much just happened, and the Astro Mirage getting so many KOs, and then switching into a Dynamax after getting the boost. I don't think I've seen that a whole lot, and it was a really interesting way to see someone play around potentially having a choice-locked Calyrex.
Yeah, it definitely to me almost gives vibes of Lunala going for a Meteor Beam, getting that special attack boost, and then Dynamaxing and taking advantage of like the 3 extra turns that you've got in a Trick Room environment. Like that's, if you are a Calyrex Shadow Rider player, those are the games you want to play. You want to play that 10 times out of 10, then you're playing technically the least amount of Pokemon possible because you're playing very quick matches, and then you have a lot less of a mental stamina drain there. But I do think that, you have, if you're Shadow Rider Calyrex, you get that game 1, you're not getting it game 2. You gotta prep for something different coming in, right? Now might be a better time to maybe bring in something that can deal with that Kyogre on that first turn if you're assuming that may be the threat. And if you're Donguk, you probably have to prep for the fact that you should not be, as fun as it is to Dynamax Incineroar, you have better Dynamax options on the team. And if you can find a way to get rid of Calyrex before having to do something like Dynamaxing your Incineroar, you can bring a Pokemon that may be better suited.
I do want to say, if that had been a KO, that would have totally flipped the match on its head. But with the way that this is trained, now knowing that you can't do that as safely, such a big shift.
Yeah, it is now a Whimsicott Zacian lead and a Thundurus Calyrex Shadow Rider lead. So, and at least now Donguk saying, I know I need some Tailwind, I need to be going quickly. I can get a Tailwind up before you can get a Max Airstream up, and maybe just handle this a little bit better.
Absolutely. I do like the adjustment from Luciano saying, I know that you've got to bring this Whimsicott. I'm going to see if maybe I can do something other than having us both lead Whimsicott and try to go for Speed Ties. Maybe this Thundurus is an option to sort of handle the output from that Zacian. I know that this Calyrex is creating a lot of threat, so maybe this Thundurus still has an opportunity to Dynamax and start doing a whole lot of damage, setting up Airstreams so that if my Whimsicott's in the back, maybe it can come in later and get that Tailwind when it's really needed.
Yeah, Calyrex here, I think, as well, now knowing that there's a good chance that it's not going to get a knockout on this first turn. If that Whimsicott is the one holding that Focus Sash, and you're probably not going to get one onto this Zacian right out of the gate because you don't have that opportunity for Fake Tears on this turn. Looks like a Dynamax right out of the gate on turn 1, though, and it's most likely going to be that Thundurus here, and that Thundurus at least giving you the opportunity to match a Tailwind with an Airstream, get some extra boosts up if you need to, and just get some big damage out onto a Pokemon to maybe help you get that knockout. You may not get the boost from it if you're going second, but it is always nice to have. Tailwind from the Whimsicott, though, means at least that the Zacian will be moving first for the moment, unless it does get that speed change. And Behemoth Blade is still going to do a nice amount of damage, may help you fish a little bit for an item. If you go into this Calyrex, you at least can see if it is that Focus Sash, and it's not. So that is a great way for Donguk to get rid of what was the monstrous threat of Calyrex Shadow Rider. No Protect coming out as well. Max Airstream going into this Whimsicott brings it down to its Focus Sash. Getting that last little bit of HP will be helpful on the next turn, but right now, it becomes a little bit tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting that KO is so huge. This Thundurus, not super happy just bringing one Pokemon down to its Focus Sash for a whole turn of Dynamax, and still being slower because Tailwind is up. I don't know if that was a damage roll, because I wouldn't have thought Behemoth Blade would do more than the 4 times super effective Max Darkness from before, but I suppose I'm not totally sure. Definitely curious if that was sort of a calculated thing, or if it was, at least I will get a lot of damage on this Calyrex, and maybe I will KO it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm interested to see right now is the set that Donguk is running is very similar to, God, was it Nantaro's set at Worlds? That Worry Seed Tickle set? Not really too much to worry about with Worry Seed at this point, as there isn't really a Pokemon to put you to sleep besides the Gastron on the other side that I do not believe we'll see, just thanks to the fact that Whimsicott was in the back for Luciano. But something to maybe pay attention to, I guess, looking forward. Tickle, though, is going to go off into this Thundurus. You're going to get the attack and the defense drop here, but you will be messing with this Defiant and getting it to +4. So you have to make sure that you are ready to knock this thing out before it goes after you right away and gets a bunch of damage off, which means that a Whimsicott Tailwind right now is going to be tougher, but Behemoth Blade goes off first from this Zacian, and that is still going to do a pretty massive amount of damage onto this Thundurus. You've got to be confident. Yeah, and I believe you got the knockout there. If it looked really close. Yeah, so that Thundurus there getting that knockout, no longer on the field, so you're happy to get those drops in compensation.
Zacian getting a KO every single turn. Sure, this Moonblast comes off and the Whimsicott's gone, so maybe Luciano has a way to come back with Tailwind and having something like a Zacian in the back, but losing your Dynamax for just one attack is such a huge deal, and Donguk making such a brilliant play, too, of going for that tickle, calling the fact that there wouldn't be a Tailwind and a target into that Zacian, because if you do set up this Thunderous with a bunch of attack, and it would be faster in Tailwind and it would get that KO, but calling that and being able to get that KO totally shifts the dynamic of this match from Donguk doing very well and in the advantage to almost just decisively having so much that he can do to secure this victory. So curious to see how this ends up being closed out. That's still very scary with Tailwind and everything, but just such brilliant play from Donguk so far.
Yeah, I'm surprised, right? Because that Tailwind always seems like the safer play, just to give yourself that extra boost in speed. But, you know, if you're not expecting the tickle to come out, you know, then then you may not exactly expect that you're going to get boosted to +4 before immediately getting knocked out and sent back into the Pokeball for the trainer. You know, I think, you know, the Moonblast, it makes a lot of sense trying to get the opposing Whimsicott off the field. But now, you know, the Zacian is in a position where it can just kind of steamroll, right? This fake out from the Rillaboom blocking the Zacian on Luciano's side of the field, allowing for this Behemoth Blade on Donguk's to just start getting a bunch more damage off onto this Whimsicott, bring it down to its Focus Sash, which I think is really going to confirm most likely those choice specs on that Calyrex. Whimsicott's Focus Sash, leaving it at that 1 HP in range of a Grassy Glide on the next turn, and it going for Moonblast into the Rillaboom on Donguk's side, just to get some extra damage off on those turns. Aiden, I do not know if I lost you here, but that is all right. These Pokemon are going to get their grassy terrain recovery. And now at least, you know, if you're the Rillaboom, you can go for something like a Grassy Glide. You can go for a Protect here. You can even go for a high horsepower. I don't think you're all too worried about this Whimsicott. You haven't seen all of its movesets, and I don't think that Luciano is going to really try and hide, is really going to try and show, knowing that he's got another set of games to go on after this.
You did lose me for a moment there. Sorry about that, Maeve. I am back now. We're going to see this Behemoth Bite coming out. Very interested to see how much damage this winds up doing to that Zacian. Not enough for a KO, and that definitely does still manage a lot of chip, though, seeing sort of how these Zacian speeds are interacting. But any sort of trade for damage now is just so in Donguk's favor. We do see the Rillaboom going down. But it still seems very tough for Donguk to find a way not to be able to close out this game with just a little bit more damage.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, right, like most of the time Zacian either gets it down to the red or just above it, so that kind of makes me think maybe that Luciano's Zacian is a little bit bulkier, a little bit slower, than versus the Zacian on Donguk's side. And Kyogre coming in here I think, is curtains at this point, right? Kyogre just comes in. It will be moving a little bit slower, I believe, at least because looking at the 4 movesets, it looks like it's probably that Assault Vest variant, and it will at least just be able to get something like an Origin Pulse or a Water Spout off.
Yeah, and being able to just go for the Dynamax to lock things up, because Donguk hasn't needed to use that yet to secure this game. Definitely just so much momentum on Donguk's side. And Luciano probably starting to think a bit about what the play should be for this final game. Seeing how that will play out.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Donguk said, all right, I'm not bringing Thundurus. I'm going to bring my double restricteds. I'm going to, you know, change up kind of my game plan here. I'm going to leave Incineroar behind as well. Like, I think, you know, leaving the Incineroar behind and still allowing for yourself to get that knockout on the Calyrex early was a really nice way of kind of saying, I'm going to make this call and it may not pay off, but I think it will. And just kind of playing those Whimsicott mind games early on of who's going to move first, and what's the special, like, what's the supportive move that you've got on your Whimsicott, right? Because Whimsicott only has 4 move slots. It has like 12 good moves. Like, it's not a Pokemon that exactly is the most. It's not limited in its move choice. You know, you'll look at a Whimsicott and you're like, oh great, is this the trick or switcheroo eject button, or is this Tickle or Charm or Worry Seed? We've seen so many different things on Whimsicott in these games that I think it is kind of a nice way to at least get that information of what it's carrying, even if, you know, you may not end up winning the game. It's something that finding out what the set on a Whimsicott is, because you can pretty much guarantee Tailwind, but you can't guarantee Protect, right? Like, a lot of them tend not to run it because they've got that Focus Sash. So when they are running Protect, it's something I think that you have to pay attention to, along with, you know, every other move that it possibly can carry.
Absolutely. I think Whimsicott has been sort of the story of this whole matchup, being able to say, like, game 1, Whimsicott revealing fake tears on one side totally decided the game, and Calyrex just swept. And then game 2, Whimsicott revealed Tickle on the other side, and then Zacian just swept. And so seeing, like, which restricted the Whimsicotts are designed to support, which sort of niche defense lowering move the Whimsicots are running. Those reveals really decided both of these sets, and I'm excited to see sort of what happens in game 3. Like the whole advantage of best of 3 being you don't automatically lose when your opponent reveals a surprise, and you can reveal a surprise to kind of come back from that. Definitely going to be exciting to see how players play when most of the chips are down now.
Yeah, and I mean, like, at least South Korea is one of those teams from the APAC region that does play in a best of 3 format, right? So you at least know that the South Korean players tend to, even though they don't, they'll still have those kind of crazy tricks to it. It's a little bit different, right? The Pokemon that we saw yesterday in yesterday's match, I got to commentate a different Whimsicott from, I said Nontaro's, it's Kinugawa's. And Kinugawa's yesterday we saw it had Encore, and Encore ended up being huge because it locked a Lunala into Trick Room for like 4 turns. And that Lunala ended up, you couldn't switch it. You just kind of had to reverse Trick Room, then get Trick Room back up, and then do something on the following turn before you reset Trick Room again. But interestingly, this one does have that Worry Seed instead of the Encore. So not something that we're probably going to see being used too much unless this Gastrodon ends up coming through for Luciano, but just something I think is important to kind of take note of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Sam's version of the 6 Pokemon on Luciano's side had a different set of Whimsicott. I don't believe it had Fake Tears on that one. It had like Taunt and Moonblast and Protect.
And a Charm. I think it was Charm.
Charm, right.
Yeah. Charm, Taunt, Tailwind, Moonblast. Like, it didn't even have Protect on it. So we've seen, 3 Whimsicotts today? Maybe 4, I don't remember. Maybe 5, who knows, right? And they've all had completely different movesets.
I think that's such an interesting thing about Whimsicott for a format like this in particular, where you like get to see what teams people use in the past. Whimsicott looks like it's the same every single time, but it's like 6 different Pokemon that all hide behind the same little like fluffy cotton costume. And I think it's exciting to see how players are using that at this high and far into the tournament.
We have Whimsicott Restricted with Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and Kyogre, 2 Pokemon that have incredibly strong, full accuracy, double targeting moves, and if you get your Tailwind up first, then you are in a great position to start putting damage down. But if you get your Tailwind up first, both of these Whimsicott have Focus Dash, so then do you make the call of lowering the special defense on the Kyogre and not getting the Tailwind up, but knocking the Kyogre out? Or does this Kyogre go for something like a Dynamax this turn, just to stay on the field? Who really knows? But instead, Luciano's Whimsicott gets that Tailwind up first, going to allow for the Calyrex to move before, but you're still playing those Whimsicott Tailwind mind games. Tailwind on the other side also going off. Astral Barrage from the Calyrex here into both of these Pokemon, going to do a ton of damage, going to bring a critical hit as well onto that Kyogre, I believe, and then that Water Spout coming off for both these Pokemon, really showing that it is that Assault Vest, though, on that Kyogre with how little damage that did.
Yeah, being able to survive probably Specs plus crit with Assault Vest getting through that is really huge, but such a tough blow for Donguk on that first turn to get the crit right before you go for Water Spout. That would have been doing so much more damage, or at least a little bit more, to both Calyrex and Whimsicott, maybe looking more like a 2-hit KO with Origin Pulse. If that had happened without getting your critical hit, lowering the damage from that Kyogre. And it's tough to see that Assault Vest basically negated this turn with that crit, but also a brilliant call from Luciano to get that Tailwind up and start reducing the damage on that Water Spout right away.
Yeah, and I think if you're Luciano, right, you're like, I got the speed tie, but we both click Tailwind, so it doesn't super matter, and I'm still going to be faster, so I think it's alright. Go for something like that special defense drop in Fake Tears and get off another Astral Barrage, but the Dynamax here from Donguk is going to probably save him, at least for the time being. Keep his Pokemon nice and healthy in Dynamax, getting that extra HP boost, and trying to take advantage of this rain while you've got it, right? And your Whimsicott on the opposite side, probably, with Tickle, it can definitely, I think, help, but it's not helping too much because you're dealing with a Pokemon that is not attack or defense worried right now in front of something like this Kyogre with those -2 special defense drops. Worry Seed, though, onto the Whimsicott on the opposing side of the field is going to make it so that Whimsicott has the Insomnia ability, so no sleeping for Whimsicott. Astral Barrage, though, doesn't get enough to knock that Whimsicott out. Another critical hit, but this time onto the Whimsicott. Not too worried there. We know that would have been a knockout. Getting 1 Grenade boost, and now I think looking pretty dangerous to go for something like a Dynamax on the next turn if this Max Geyser does not knock it out.
Max Geyser going into that Calyrex is going to be enough to get that KO. So that's a huge relief for Donguk. It must be, to get rid of the potential for that Fake Tears Astral Barrage combo. That being so fast even in Tailwind was really tough. one thing that was just brilliant from Donguk this turn is if his Whimsicott had won the speed tie and gotten that Worry Seed off, then Fake Tears would have happened after the Astro Barrage from Calyrex, and this Kyogre would have had way more hit points just by removing that Prankster so that the speed order is different. And I thought that was such a brilliant play that you cover the Gastrodon switching in, it can't redirect the Max Geyser, and you also cover the play that was made 50% of the time. And it didn't work out for Donguk, but I think there's just so much subtle play here in how these first two turns are going, that things aren't quite going Donguk's way, but he's playing so well to try to handle the threat of this Calyrex.
Today is Whimsicott's day. Today is the day of Whimsicott, declaring Sunday, September 4th, Whimsicott Day. Zacian coming out in pairing with the Whimsicott on Luciano's side of the field. And then next to the Kyogre is going to be Donguk's own Zacian. So both of them getting their Intrepid Swords. Looks like Donguk's does come up first. Luciano's goes up second there. So that, I think we already had that confirmation that Luciano's was kind of a little bit slower, maybe that max HP, because that Zacian did not take as much damage from the Behemoth Blade as maybe expected. And, at this point, you can probably just get a pretty good knockout onto the Whimsicott, or just get a bunch of chip damage onto the Zacian and then knock it out, possibly with a Max Geyser.
Absolutely, and with that Whimsicott losing Prankster, it can't do nearly as much this turn. It might be a bit threatened and want to switch out. It's going to be harder for it to set Tailwind later. We do see Donguk maybe just targeting down that Zacian, though, getting that Behemoth Blade off to start.
Yeah, Behemoth Blade here going into the Zacian on Luciano's side, brings it down to take a bunch of damage, still not into the red as of just yet. Whimsicott going for a Moonblast though, maybe trying to get that special attack drop, which I think that it does here. Does get the special attack drop onto the Kyogre. Every little bit helps, right? And Behemoth Blade from the Zacian also going to be targeting, I believe, into this Kyogre. Probably just trying to get enough chip damage, get that full knockout, and get that confirmation. No target into the Zacian on Donguk's side of the field, but still getting that big restricted off of the field before it can do any more damage with something like an Origin Pulse out of Dynamax is very helpful.
That Moonblast just sort of adding insult to injury from the earlier bad luck the Kyogre had. The Behemoth Blade would have finished it off no matter what. But still, probably a little bit frustrating for Donguk to see. Nothing seems to be going quite his way, but this positioning in the endgame is super interesting. I think we saw Grassy Glide in Game 1, Donguk sort of checking how much it did. I think it's pretty close right now. I'm not sure if it's a KO or not. Maybe it's safer just to go for high horsepower, but it's pretty close on that Zacian that like a Fake Out plus Grassy Glide would almost KO. And so I think that's it's interesting that Donguk has checked the Grassy Glide damage on both of these Pokemon to know whether this is a potential KO or not. I think that really helps from making a potential pitfall in this turn of trying to go for something that won't be a KO.
Whimsicott goes for the Protect here, and I think you're right. I think it's going to be very, very close. Zacian on that side also going for the Protect, though. I think getting this grassy terrain recovery is really huge, because then you can handle one Grassy Glide. Fake Out not connecting, Behemoth Blade not connecting, thanks to these Protects. So having, I think at this point, the opportunity to maybe get as much HP back as you can so that you can handle one Grassy Glide, maybe get another Tailwind up as well now that they don't have the opportunity to set Tailwind this turn and go faster.
Such an interesting question here now is whether the Zacian on Donguk's side is faster than the Whimsicott, because Whimsicott doesn't have Prankster anymore. It can't just Tailwind for sure, but it can if the Zacian's slower. And it's just a tough situation too, because there's a little more damage on that Whimsicott way back on turn 1 from the Water Spout having more hit points on the Kyogre. Might have totally changed this. The Grassy Glide could have been a KO on Whimsicott if it had just a little bit less health. But given the position we're in now, it looks like it might just come down to how fast this Zacian is how fast Whimsicott is.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, right, this is where things get funky. This is where when you're using Worry Seed, I'm like, well, no one's getting put to sleep. But it's like, yeah, but Worry Seed does 12 other things in a way you wouldn't think about. Grassy Glide into the Whimsicott, though, doesn't do enough to get that knockout. Behemoth Blade from the Zacian also going first, meaning that if you get this Whimsicott knocked out, which you don't, you actually target into the Zacian, but a Behemoth Blade will take care of that Zacian. Whimsicott will be allowed to go for a Tailwind on this turn, most likely. Actually going for a Moonblast instead, so no worry of the speed control here going into that Zacian. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Rain does wrap up here as well. Not that that's too big of a worry, but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit funky right now.
Yeah, I think maybe Luciano being a bit more confident than I was about Donguk's speed on the Zacian. I'm going, okay, if I can't Tailwind first, maybe I don't need to Tailwind, and just trying to get some chip into that Zacian, potentially getting some damage to, like maybe the Zacian on Luciano's side also targeted. And now we're seeing this sort of endgame coming down to Luciano, I don't believe has used Dynamax yet, and so this Thundurus has the potential to try to just take everything out. but Zacian is sort of the Pokemon that specializes in taking out Dynamax Pokemon, and so it's going to really come down to the wire here in terms of how the damage trades work out from Thundurus versus Zacian in almost a 1v1. There's these grass types sitting alongside that can't do a whole lot of damage to either side, but that Moonblast chip might end up mattering a whole lot, and maybe being able to get one more or keep distracting that Rillaboom might give a chance for the Thundurus to try to edge out a situation that's pretty tough for it.
Yeah, because I mean, with one defense drop, we saw that the Thundurus was able to get knocked out in that prior game thanks to one Behemoth Blade, I think. So maybe a Grassy Glide plus a Behemoth Blade is going to be able to get that knockout. But I think if you're Luciano, you have to Dynamax anyway. You just sort of have to go for it. Maybe you go for, I don't even know if he is holding has a Protect to maybe go for something like a Max Guard and try and stall out some of these grassy terrain turns, maybe allow for the Whimsicott to get a Tailwind up if they're so worried about targeting into the Thundurus, as the Whimsicott is not so much of a threat. Grassy Glide, no Max Guard though, into that Thundurus, does a pretty decent chunk of damage for a Pokemon move that's not very effective. Behemoth Blade will be following that right up as well for Donguk, going into the Thundurus, doing a bunch of damage. It's enough for the knockout there, so I'm assuming that that was enough thanks to that chip from that Grassy Glide. And, you know, after seeing how much it did even with one defense drop, that's pretty insane.
Absolutely. Donguk really knowing the calcs there to know that this was a good option. Because if that Thundurus had survived, and the Tailwind went off, and the Thundurus did a Max Lightning into the Zacian, suddenly Grassy Glide would have been gone, and you would have been able to Max Lightning again to finish off the Zacian, or Airstream to finish off the Rillaboom, and then Whimsicott might have been able to close things off with just a little bit of chip into the remaining Pokemon. So, such a crucial KO from Donguk that the game really did just about come down to that. Donguk would have had a lot of options, even if that hadn't happened, but being able to get that KO, the Zacian just putting in so much work, exactly the right amount of speed, exactly the right amount of attack, and Luciano just forfeiting to a very well-played game from Donguk, and such a tight set. It's really amazing to be able to see these players play in such high-stakes matches where you might... there's so much offense on the board that it's really hard to stay calm and think things through, but it felt like Donguk did such a great job of navigating through that with the Dynamax Kyogre at just the right time.
Yeah, I think he understood exactly how rough Calyrex was to deal with after that first game, and then made the very understandable and important call of getting Calyrex off of the field as quickly as possible and saying, I don't want to deal with this. I'm all set. I'm all good. I am all good. And, you know, I think the dueling Whimsicots, like we've said, like we keep spouting our praises for, they're so interesting just in their sets and how they're meant to support their own restricted Pokemon, right? Fake Tears is such a good move to have in combination with Pokemon like Calyrex Shadow Rider or even like Kyogre, right? Because then you can at least lower the opponent's special defense. You can get a bunch of damage off moving forward, get those Grim Neigh boosts if that's what you're running, and, you know, try and get as much as you can off before the opponent can do any damage to you, and you can start your steamroll, which that game one game plan is exactly how you want to play every single game. It's just, you know, Donguk was wise enough to slow the game down in his favor and find a good way to kind of change that momentum and prevent that Whimsicott from helping that Calyrex from becoming an absolute menace.
And crucially, that the techs on Donguk's Whimsicott were really helpful for that. Getting that Worry Seed on the Whimsicott, it didn't totally flip the game necessarily, but it made things so much harder for Luciano because you couldn't get those priority Tailwinds off to make sure the Thundurus was faster. You had to worry about Grassy Glide from Rillaboom KOing you before Tailwind, which is not something anyone's ever thought about with Whimsicott a whole lot, I would imagine. How do you play it if it doesn't have Prankster? I'm not sure. And so it was just so interesting to see players being really creative with the moves they have and finding everything they can do with them.
Really good news for South Korea, though, is that they are currently 5-1. They are one step closer to their 6-1 last year record against Brazil. This was a rematch. You know, they've already moved on, but I think at this point, right, if you're South Korea, you are thrilled at probably the results. I said this yesterday. South Korea's team is probably one of the most stacked rosters in the entire World Cup. Every single one of those players has, like, insane accolades. I'm like, you know, throughout the years, some of them are super talented, not just in this format, but in many years past formats as well. You know, like we just saw, I believe there was a couple of 2017 results for Donguk. So it's really, you know, it's just crazy to me that this team, I really expect them to do incredibly well because they are so talented.
Absolutely. It really showed in this game. It felt like both sides were playing so well, and it was wonderful to be able to see that from a match where sometimes you might think that players would write off the match and not think it's so important because it doesn't decide the stakes. But both of these sides seem to be really set on, will Brazil repeat the same record, or will it show some improvement relative to Korea and get like 5-2 or 4-3? It really felt like both players put their hearts on the line for this one. And it was really nice to be able to see so much creativity coming out, and just a really insightful play from Donguk in that last game. I was just incredibly impressed by the way that Assault Vest Kyogre worked out. Even though it got unlucky, it did so much.
Yeah, even that critical hit, I think, ended up not mattering all too much by the end of it. We still have 2 more matches, and both of these next 2 matches seem really, really, really crazy to me. Our next match, when we come back from our short break, is going to be between Italy and France. It is Flavio Del Pidio versus Aurelien Sula. So those are some players that that are just so talented. Italy and France, I think, faced off as well last year. In the same exact part of the bracket, and I believe France. I just remember France had just knocked out Japan, I believe, like right beforehand. So it was like a really big deal. So either way, do not go anywhere. We still have some incredibly exciting matches to be played.